We are back on the Reinventing Capitalism series, and we've got a bunch of questions to ask you for sure. But let me ask you literally the base question, right? Today, technology is contributing big time in wealth creation, and we all are a result of it. We can look around and we can see what's happening.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on this whole, conversation?
Yeah, so Selvi, let me first kind of start by saying that, a few people reached out to me also saying that, are you like, not being sadist, I mean, you are like a technology person through and through, but are you like not being too anti-technology? So let me clarify, right? I'm not being anti-technology. I love technology, right? For me, if I had to do anything, really, the only thing I understand in the world is technology. If people start talking about art, I completely like zone out. And the
Yes.
only thing I do understand is technology in my life. So I thought, okay, let's take this, conversation and explain the mechanism, what is happening today in terms of the technology industry, and how is this being created, how is inequity being created or accelerated by technology, and how you can still be pro technology, so you can still be using technology, but you can be doing it in a bit more of a equitable manner, right? It
Right.
could be the fruits of technology can be spread out a little more. I know
Yeah.
that there is this narrative that technology is a winner takes all market and or industry, but I honestly feel that there are a lot of ways to look at this problem, and it's not necessarily the case. It might just be created, or this technology takes the winner takes all narrative might just be created by VCs
Yeah.
because it serves their purpose, right? Nothing against VCs also,
Yes.
but
Disclaimer, no.
there is a reason they're called vulture capitalists. So we
Yeah.
have to be a bit clear about it. So that's, I think, what I want to go deeper today in this conversation.
Right.
Essentially, first I want to explain what is inequity exactly and how is inequity being created, the mechanism of a
Yeah.
tech company
Yeah.
doing it, and then the social issues, right? What happens because of that?
Mm-hmm.
And finally, just talk a little bit about our solution, right? So
Yeah.
I've given it a fancy name also, because I think YouTube and you guys love fancy acronyms.
Fancy.
So
Yes,
let's
that's
see.
true.
Yeah,
We're in the social media generation, You have to make it cool and fancy, you know. Yeah.
that piece you handle. I'll just come and speak. So that's all I need.
Sounds good. So, okay, let's actually address the inequity that we talked about, right? What technology is creating, and what are some of them? I know you addressed on a mechanism. Can you actually tell us what are these
Sure.
mechanisms you're talking about?
So I think, see, first of all, let me start by saying that, okay, why do we use the word inequity, not inequality, right? So
Right.
there's a fundamental difference. So you go by the dictionary definition. Inequity fundamentally means, lack of opportunities. Inequality is just different distribution of resources, but inequity
Right.
means, the choices are different. The choices are not there, right? So there's a slight nuance to it. And that's why inequity is more important, because you can be a poor person, but if you have the same opportunity as the other person, you have the chance to grow. But with inequity, you don't have that. And that's the fundamental thing we want to solve. So let me get into, like, get you through a roadmap or how a company typically functions, right?
Sure.
Let's talk about Uber. That's like probably one of the
Yeah.
darlings of the world, changed the world, blah, blah, blah. And how did it work, right? So the first thing, Uber started out as an experiment with few people, few rich kids, playing around. Let's have a limo on our phones, sort of thing, to impress girls. I mean, I'm not saying it,
Yeah, yeah, sure. That's a yeah.
Travis. Yeah,
Sure.
Travis has said this many times publicly, right? So but the moment they thought, okay, there is something there, there's some traction happening, the idea seems to be interesting, right? So the step one is raise a bunch of VC capital, right?
Mm.
And why do you raise a lot of VC capital? Because you are afraid that, if you slow down, there'll be a lot of copycats. Fair enough, there'll be a lot of copycats, and that's what capitalism is all about, right? Competition. And so you raise a bunch of VC capital. This is what Uber did. I think probably the fastest ever VC funding raised by any company in history, probably, right? And then, you know, step one, raise so much capital so that no other company,
Could
competing
try.
company,
Could even
would
try.
one try, and two, get those pool of VCs, right? That's
Mm.
also true, right? They want to lock out those VCs
Yeah.
so that they can't go and invest in competing companies, right? So that's why they would not raise from one VC a lot, but
But a
from
group
bunch
of
of
them.
VCs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's done, right? You've sort of proven that you are the early mover, right? And by the way, Uber was not the early mover. It was just the first company to raise a bunch of VC money,
Yes, I've
right?
heard of this now many, many times, but the other guys
I
that
I know the first company that did it. It was called Flywheel. I know the founder. I don't know the founder, but the CEO that used to run it. Rakesh. He's a dear friend. But yeah, that's a story for another day. Right?
sure.
We'll get it. It's a juicy story. But yeah, so the second step is you raise a bunch of money and you burn a lot of money,
Yeah.
because that makes it impossible for incumbents, which is, let's say, the taxi industry, which is, let's say, the large Toyotas and
Yeah.
Hondas, companies which do business for profit, right? That's kind of what people do, to never come and compete. Because
Yeah.
so think about it. You're starting a taxi company. Who will compete with you? Right? It could be taxi companies, right?
Yeah.
Existing taxi companies. Two, it could be large car companies if they see that the market is big enough. Toyota, BMW, Mercedes, they'll all want a pie of it. And then it could be, like big industrial houses in country. Think of it like Bill Gates and Amazon, for example. Amazon is
Mm.
just a mega company. They would want to do anything that, but why would they not do it? Because there is fundamentally so much burn happening in the industry. The
Mm.
whole industry is unprofitable. It is created, or it is done, or it is made unprofitable by design by these first
Mm.
few people. So Uber, for example, Uber, Ola in India, Grab in Thailand, where I am right now, and then multiple other, let's say, Careem in Middle East. They made the
Bolt
whole
in Europe. Yeah.
Bolt in Europe. Yeah. So the whole industry was made unprofitable, so that a good old business house that is doing business for profit cannot get into it, right? Right? They can't compete. So see, now
Yeah.
understand the problem with capitalism theory, right? Capitalism is all about competition, and they are designing it in such a way so that you know you can't compete, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want competition, right?
I mean,
And
it's a
then
funny way to say designing for no business, designing for gain.
exactly, so you make it such that it's a stupid business to get into, right? Anybody wants to do
Mm.
a mobility business, the first thing you will be told by VCs, no, that's a bad business, you can't get into it. That's by design, right? It's
Mm.
completely anti-competitive, right? And it has been invented by VCs very successfully. But I'll come to what happens in that case. So, and then, so now Uber becomes like a 20, 30 billion, or maybe 40, 50 billion. I think the last private valuation was maybe 80 billion. I don't know exactly, but SoftBank put in money at 80 billion or something, right? Or maybe 40, I don't know. But at that point, it's mostly just a number, right? It doesn't really matter what the valuation is, because see, you may think that, okay, SoftBank putting money in Uber at 80 billion valuation makes the company 80 billion, but it's not,
It's
because
not. Yeah.
because SoftBank already has like 30, 40% of the company at that point, and by them putting in like a 3 billion, 4 billion check at 80 billion, they're actually marking up the value of their own initial money or initial stake, right? Considerably. So essentially, think of it like this. It's a total Ponzi scheme, if you ask me. So think of it this way. SoftBank owns, I mean, the numbers could be off, but the gist is the same, right? So SoftBank owns 40% of Uber, right? The total valuation or average cost would be, say, $10 billion, right? Value. And now they come in and say, okay, they say, okay, I'll put in $2 billion at 80 billion valuation pre-IPO, right? What are they doing? They are saying that, now the company is $80 billion. We already own 40% of it. And that 40% is 80 billion, 40% of 80 billion, which is 40 billion. And, so by them putting in the last tranche at 80 billion is essentially the last step of Ponzi scheme to justify the valuation of a 30, $40 billion asset to become 80 billion. Got it?
Mm.
So now it becomes, that's the threshold value because people have paid money on that and real
Yeah.
serious $2-3 billion. So now what happens? The company goes public or gets sold, right? I mean, in case of India's Flipkart, it got sold. In case of, let's say, Uber, it got public, right? Goes public, generally crashes quite a bit because obviously that valuation is phony and the cash flows, etc., don't make any sense. Now, the market stabilizes, and fair enough, the 80 billion comes down to 40 billion, still kind of not very genuine. But how does but the company has to grow into that valuation now, right? Now that's the last stage of this, inequity mechanism, right? So and it's honestly, it's totally anti-capitalistic or anti-competitive, right? And if I can see it, I'm sure everybody can, but
Yeah,
that's the
sure.
game, right? So, so now what happens is the final stage, the company has to grow into that valuation by increasing the margins or revenues, right? So how do they do that, right? The basic rule of doing that is in a marketplace like Uber, there is drivers and restaurants on one side, there are customers on the other side. Now you are a monopoly, exploit both. Just imagine Uber is a service that is just an app, you know, cost them maybe like the cost of technology would be maximum five. I mean, I do the same technology, right? So I know the thing, right? So it would be maximum 5 cents per ride, right? And they charge like up to 30% from drive. That's their top metric that, okay, we can charge 30% per ride from a driver and that's how our revenue is increasing. Fair enough, it's capitalistic. You can charge whatever you want. You have created a monopoly. Now it's time to milk the monopoly. Guess what? Every driver is unhappy.
Every driver
Every
is
restaurant
unhappy.
is unhappy. In fact, how did I come to this conversation? My sister owns 5 restaurants in US. Okay. And I asked her, like, so what do you think about Uber and Uber Eats and Grubhub? She says they are a necessary evil. What can I do? I hate them, but I have to work with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a stupid thing. I mean, it should be such that the business or the company that is giving me so much work, why shouldn't these service providers love them,
Yeah.
right? Because they are exploiting them, and that's by design. So essentially, you raise a bunch of capital to lock everybody out. You burn all that capital to fundamentally destroy the industry so that nobody insane mindset
Doesn't
can
want to
get
do
into
something
that.
very similar. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you exploit sides or everybody to make, bunch of money and have insane margins and increase. So that's the model. To a lot of people, this is very competitive. I don't think it is super competitive. I think it is fundamentally not competitive and not capitalistic in nature. This is a Ponzi scheme designed by VCs. And honestly, the entrepreneurs don't make the most money in this game.
Mm.
VCs do. So, for a 40 or $50 billion company that, let's say, Travis Kalanick built, I'm guessing he would have probably gotten out maybe at max $1 billion, right? Maybe not even that. But at that point, Uber, I think, was maybe even $100 billion or something. So, the entrepreneur is not the real winner. The real winners are the VC funds. So it's not a
Mm.
Ponzi scheme being driven by entrepreneurs, but it's a Ponzi scheme driven by VC funds. So that's the whole story. So yeah. So does
Wow.
it make sense?
Let's beat up VCs. But I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
want to say,
I have a lot of friends in VCs. I hope they don't get angry, but that's the truth. I mean, they
I
know this
mean,
game anyway.
I feel like, you're probably not the first one to bring these up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's reality.
Definitely not.
Yeah. And some of us don't voice it, and some of us, but all of us know. I think also one thing, I think there's VC obviously pop, I do believe as an individual who uses Uber
Mhm.
could be, I know for sure, benefited because at the end of the day, you've got a crazy deal.
Yeah,
It's so much more easier to use Uber today than actually get a car. You spend more if you get a car versus using Uber,
yeah.
right? Um,
No, so totally aligned. The advantages of technology are amazing. It's a amazing innovation that should have happened. All
yeah,
I'm saying is, and the last part, today's call, the last part would be the solution on how to do the same thing, but can it be spread out to all the drivers, for example?
yeah.
Can they not be so angry at the
And upset,
parent
right?
company?
I mean, I totally
Exactly.
agree. As someone
And,
who
and
uses,
like, and
I've
tell
had
me,
people.
let me give you a simple example. You know, Amul, world's largest cooperative. Every farmer, you go to Gujarat, I think the name of the place is Anand or something, right? I've heard stories, I've not been there, but I've heard that there are so many, milk farmers or, farmers who are so prosperous
Yeah,
because of Amul, right? Amul was able to pass on the benefits to the farmers, the company, the brand building,
yeah,
the margins were all there,
yeah.
but they were being distributed across the
Distributed across.
farmers
Yeah,
because they were shareholders in that,
yeah,
right? And that's the essential theory, right?
yeah.
That's where we want to get to.
Yep,
So
yep. That's a good example. So, okay, this is this is great and controversial to some extent, but I know you talked about some social consequences of these
yeah,
mechanism. We did talk about from a business and the inequity and what happens and all of that. But how does it impact socially?
sure. So see, let me start with a story. So the worst day of my life, of my professional life, right? Honestly, I vividly remember is the day I had to lay off people,
Mm.
right? And I had to lay off like 300 people in a day,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Just unimaginable tough day. You have to like keep a strong pace and just do it because you need to do it. And this is the first consequences. You have to grow super fast, but the moment you pivot, okay, lay off 300 people. And in case of Baiju's, lay off 10,000 people, right? So let me tell you in my own story, in Jugnu, what happened? We raised $15 million. Some people might get offended, but it's okay. Doesn't really matter much, right? So what happened is I got money from tier one VCs, and good people, right? No issues there. One not so good entity, but I guess would be pretty obvious who that was. So what happened is I raised money and we were growing like wildfire, right? And we were doing pretty well, burning a lot of money, playing the same game that I just explained. And what happened is, I looked at data, I could understand that, okay, 60% of the growth is bogus, which is purely like sort of, these people are never going to be my customers. They're students or not, can't pay, etc. And they'll never be my real customers. But 30%, 40% is good, which I could have already gotten like a slightly slower way, but without doing all that shenanigans. Right. So I would go to my board, tell them, okay, this is the story. And the answer would be, don't worry about it, just burn all the money. Money is not a problem. The moment you run out of money, you'll get more money, right? And as I was near burning, near the end of runway, right, 3 4 months of cash left, right, I spoke to the same people who funded, and they said that, well, the numbers are not making sense. It seems Uber and Ola have already won the game, so we don't want to put more money, and it's best to sort of either shut down, or one way to get money is, you give us like 51% or control in the company, and then we can invest, right? Because then it will be more like a group company and stuff like that. That's a typical VC playbook, right? So, and I said, okay, fair enough. I thought about it. I thought, okay, and I'm like not a person. I'm not so, I'm not the person who's, so let me put it this way. You tell me something not so politely, there's a good chance I'll just not do it, right? I'm sort of a rebel in that case, right? So I said, okay, fuck it. I mean, I don't care. I'm going to just make it profitable and run it slowly. So the first problem, from this is speed of growth. You
Mm.
have to keep speed of growth super high. That means you hire a bunch of people, right? Just crazy amount, just open door policy. Anybody wants to get hired, just go. You don't even know sometimes. Sometimes, would happen that people are being paid salaries. And in case of Ashnee's Rover, this is exactly what happened. Like multiple people on payroll of, I think, Bharat Pay's payroll, and Ashnee's wife's brother's company or something was being paid from that. They were not even employees really. That's all in public domain. I don't know what the truth is, but that's all in public domain being alleged, right? So these things happen when the speed is such. In our case, there'll be scams where call center employees would be scamming the company, etc., etc. All sort of scammy stuff goes on, right? And then when you have to change the gears suddenly, there are layoffs. There are like thousands of people lose jobs. First, they are like making crazy amount of money randomly for really doing no work, and then they are laid off, which is both sort of wrong, right? So that's the first issue that happens. And second issue that happens is it's a total lack of innovation in the company. So all these companies, when they have $1 billion, when they have $100 million, what do? Right? I know a few companies again, so let's say uh, some of these quick delivery companies, right? Burn per transaction or per rupee of total revenue was like 5 rupees. So let's say 100 rupees of total revenue, you are burning about 500 rupees for that. So do you think you will be innovating in that scenario? No, nobody is
You
really
were, then you
innovating.
wouldn't be burning so much.
Exactly. So there is zero innovation, zero value addition. People are not thinking. The only thought process is, okay, how do I get more budget to burn more to grow faster so
Mm.
that my project is the one that is, getting all the attention and all that stuff. So total lack of innovation, second issue, right? And third issue, all the delivery partners, all the service partners are totally unhappy,
Unhappy. Mm.
right? You look at Zomato, which restaurant likes Zomato,
Yeah, that's true.
right? Which restaurant likes Swiggy? Which driver likes Uber and Ola? Nobody, right? You go to Vadodara, you talk to drivers, you know, and they would love Jugnal. But they'll say that same thing. The problem is that this company is an Indian company, they can't burn money. So we have to work with everybody else, but we love them, right? The problem is that they also understand that this burn game is going to eventually exploit them.
Mm.
So they want to make sure that we survive, right? But we also understand the game, and the this I'll come to the solution part also. But see, the point is Every service provider is unhappy. And even when the burn is happening, let me give you an
Yeah.
example. When the burn is happening, you would assume that, every restaurant would be super happy.
Yeah.
But honestly, a lot of burn is happening on cheating.
Mm,
The company employees would go to restaurants and say, okay, do some fake billing, etc. So you look at history of Zomato, look at history of Swiggy, look at any on-demand company's history. They've all had these, times when there were multiple or, massive layoffs or massive cheating issues being found out. And, reason every employee knew that for every 5 rupee or 10 rupee, there is like 50 rupee of burn happening. Let me make 10 rupees out of it. So it's not going to restaurant, it's not going to the customer only. It's being cheated away of the company,
mm,
right? So third issue was every service provider is unhappy.
mm.
So, that's I think the fundamental issues. One is because of speed of growth or speed of execution, the layoffs, the mistakes,
Yeah.
all those issues, they fall directly to the employees. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, zero innovation in that
Innovation.
company. The
Yeah.
only thesis is how do you burn maximum by, and at the founder level, it's about how do you raise maximum to burn
Yeah.
maximum. At the employee level, how do you, get maximum budget to burn maximum. So total lack of innovation. Number three, all the restaurants, all the service providers are unhappy because they know that this is a dance. That if you can, so it's like that. If you get a lottery, there's this research that most of the lottery winners end up broke. It's that kind of money for restaurants. Some of
Mm.
them do make a lot of money by who can cook in that burn phase, but most of it doesn't go to
Yeah.
productive use, right? So that's I think where it
Yeah.
ends. There is some innovation happens at the total, yes, the taxpayer,
Yeah.
Indian
Yeah. Yeah.
government, for example, would be happy because they are able to get more money into the economy, etc., etc. But I think
But
there's
those
a
are all
better way
again the
to do it.
consequences of the game, not because somebody innovated.
Exactly. So I think the thing is, so what we feel is that there's a better way to do it.
Mm.
And
Awesome.
let me
Which is
give
my
some
next question,
examples.
actually. We can even jump right into it. I know you
Mhm.
talked about, and to some extent, you talked about what doesn't work, and you talked about how this doesn't work and this doesn't work, and we don't want to be people that just complain, right? What is your
Yeah,
solution?
yeah. So I think so. My solution is bet. You know, this is a big, bold bet we are placing, and I feel this is going to change the game, right? Let me start by, explaining or giving a few examples of how some of the most successful companies have been created in the past, right? When there were no VCs at that scale, right? I think to be honest, like if you dial it back, a lot of issues will come down to VCs, right? VCs are supposed to be needed where there is, a lot of upfront capital needed. There's a lot of innovation needed, a lot of, research needed. Not necessarily where, you burn money to, create a monopoly. So that's, I think, so let me come out with some example, right? So number one example is, McDonald's, one of the largest brands in the food brands in the world. Yum Brands,
Yeah.
largest food company in the world, probably, if not the largest, one of the largest, right? What have they done? They have a simple model where they create the IP, they understand the customer really well, they have the brand, and they find local franchisees to run the business. So if
Yeah.
you think about a McDonald's, a Domino's, a Subway, right, the wealth creation is super equitable, right? There are thousands of
Right.
franchisees globally, and in case of Subway, probably like hundreds of thousands,
Yeah.
who are making decent amount of money through that model. It's
Yeah.
still capitalistic, still public companies, right? But the wealth divide or wealth, the distribution of wealth is much more equitable. They're creating more entrepreneurs. They're not
Right.
necessarily, just exploiting everything. So that's, let's say, number one.
And not
Number,
necessarily unhappy.
yeah, they're
They're all
super happy.
making, yeah, they're actually
I know
doing.
a lot of, franchisees of McDonald's and Subway. A lot of them are our customers, and they are super happy because, they know that they have the IP, they have the brand built up, and they have to operate, and they get a decent wage out of it, right? And okay, second example which I touched upon earlier is Amul, right? And
Yeah.
you go to Denmark, you go to, all the Scandinavian countries. In fact, I thought that, earlier, it's just a segue. I earlier thought that Scandinavian countries were, you know, rich because of the, the natural resources, or they had oil or something. But honestly, a friend of mine who lives in Denmark, he explained to me that all the wealth, most of the wealth created in Denmark or Scandinavian countries was based on agricultural communes or these cooperatives, which are agricultural cooperatives essentially. But the wealth was distributed very well, right? So that's why
Nice.
they are
Mm.
so, and most people don't know that their wealth has been created mostly by agricultural cooperatives, which is
Mm.
and Amul is actually a model that we took from there rather
Mm.
than inventing. But that's okay. I mean, copy a good thing doesn't
Yeah,
hurt.
absolutely. Copy a good
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. So so these are some examples, right? So what do we want to? So what is bet? Let me
Mm-hmm.
come to that. So bet is brand entrepreneurs technology,
Mm.
right? So it's very simple. What I'm proposing is you create brands, let's say like Uber. So Jugnu is an example, just like Uber, right? We operate in 40 plus countries right now, right? But operations locally are always handled by an entrepreneur. We charge 2%, 1%, roughly, like mostly we charge 2-ish% of the transaction value. The entrepreneur gets about
Samar,
8% of the.
may be useful to quickly share Jugno so that, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So Jugnu is our brand. It's in Jungleworks umbrella sort of brand, which is a ride-hailing brand. We do all the use cases in mobility, and the difference is that we have local entrepreneurs who run the operations. So a local partner will be running the operations, and they'll be getting about 80% of net revenue. We get about 20%. So in, let's say, 100 rupee transaction, 2 rupees come to us, or $100 transaction, $2 come to us, $8 go to the local partner, and $90 go to the driver, right? Typically, that's the case. So what we feel is, so this model is, the brand is created by us or any entrepreneur, right? Any entrepreneur. So I'll give you an example. Flash is a delivery company in UK. So this is a 19-year-old entrepreneur, right? Super energetic. I'm thinking, we'll bring him
Yeah.
on this pod next time. Let me talk to him and bring him in.
Yeah.
And super cool guy, and started a food delivery or grocery delivery business in UK, right? Is competing with the big guys who have raised 20 million, 30 million, right? Because of his grit. So what
Mm.
we're doing is we're taking his brand, giving franchisees to local players, so about 300 local players in UK, right? All over small towns, big towns. We divide the area in, let's say, 400, 500 grids and distribute it across to local players. And the technology is owned by this Flash guy,
Yeah.
right? He makes a little bit of every transaction.
Yeah.
So same model, same innovation, same business model. The customer gets the same experience, but the growth is equitable. The
Right.
distribution of wealth is much more equitable, right?
Right.
There are 1,000 entrepreneurs rather than one mega company,
Yeah.
right? Charging 40, 50%, right? There are these 1,000 entrepreneurs charging in total about 10%, 15%, or maybe in some cases a flat fee of a few cents, right? From the service provider. So what's the end goal? Service provider is happy,
Yeah.
many more entrepreneurs are making money, and there is a top company. Flash would be a fairly large company, definitely,
Yeah.
but
But
it's
it's not
not
one versus one is winning and everybody is losing.
exactly. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it's maybe not going to be a $1 trillion company, right? But that's okay.
That's
So I
okay.
think,
Yeah.
so that's, I think, the model that we have. So let me do this. Let me bring, the founder of Flash
Yeah.
on the call next time. And I think let's just hear his story out,
Stories. Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Because this will kind of make sense. And just to kind of wrap it up,
Yeah.
I completely am super bullish on all the innovation that is happening because of, I mean, that's what our company does essentially. We build on-demand software,
Yeah.
right? And we are super lucky. We have, amazing impact. We run in over 150 countries. We have brands like McDonald's, KFC's, name a brand, there's a good chance we are
Yeah.
working with them somewhere, right? So how do we build that, or take that playbook and build these brands
Yeah.
which are much more equitable?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I want to maximize impact.
Yeah.
If I have a choice of building, let's say, $100 billion company versus a $10 billion company, but the wealth was distributed more equitably in the $10 billion case, I would always choose the later,
Mm.
right? I mean, it depends, maybe it's not the right path for everybody, but my thesis is, if we can find more entrepreneurs like that who can create these brands, we'll bring in the entrepreneurs, we'll bring in the tech. I think we can do a revolution. We can,
Yeah.
and you think about it. I was talking to a deputy commissioner in my hometown, in fact, just a few days ago, was telling me that they are able to create a lot of these micro entrepreneurs, right? Like somebody's making clothes, somebody's making school bags, somebody's making these shoes, and they are able to distribute. So the administration is helping them distribute the products out, right? So I think I believe in micro entrepreneurship,
Mm.
and if I can put in technology
Yeah. It's only
and create micro entrepreneurship, that speeds things up massive. So I
yeah.
think that's the thesis. And yeah, let's bring in a successful example
Yeah.
on this pod
Yeah. And to hear
and
some
show,
from him. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be wonderful.
let's do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Summer, thank you. I think I know even though we started with, this is what's happening, but I like the solution part. I also I think I understand the conversation about how we all can grow versus as long as I grow, it's all good. So I
I
think
mean,
that's what
the
we address.
world is not zero-sum game.
Yeah.
It's not a winner takes all world. That's what VCs want us to believe,
Yeah.
because that's how they maximize. I mean, they can't. So, for example, the model I explained to you, it doesn't appeal to a VC
Yeah, it doesn't.
because they
I'm
can't make.
probably sure some of them will ping you. For sure.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, but probably they'll just like write me off or stop talking to
Yeah.
me, but whatever, right? But the point is that see, I don't hate VCs, but I
Yeah,
hate the
obviously.
industry
Exactly.
they're creating because of this playbook that you have to create everything into a winner takes all narrative,
Yeah.
right? The moment I hear winner takes all narrative, I feel okay. Maybe in case of Nvidia, Intel, maybe it's true. But think about it. Intel was an absolute monopoly. Where is Intel today? You know, like if we had believed in the winner takes all narrative, ARM would not have been able to challenge Intel. I think that's what we have to believe. Every entrepreneur has to believe that winner takes all is not, maybe for few years it's true, but it's not going to be
It's a
eternity.
long-term game. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I'll want to end it with a Winston Churchill quote. I didn't like the guy particularly because of his behavior on India, But well, this quote is still good, and I have to give him credit. Failure is not the end, success is not final. It's the courage to continue that matters,
Mm,
right? Maybe a word here and there, but
yeah,
the
we
idea
could we
is,
could put that down. Yeah, for sure.
no, it's a given, it's a famous quote. So the point is very simple, right? It's a
Yeah,
The idea is we want to inspire entrepreneurs through this medium.
yeah,
Guys, there's a way to hustle
yeah.
and create large companies without thinking that you have to create a Google necessarily.
Mm.
And $100 million company or a $10 million company is a life-changing event for most entrepreneurs,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And we would want to create 100 entrepreneurs who believe in that and work towards that, rather than 10 entrepreneurs who want to build the next Google. There are a lot of those anyway. I mean, then they'll
Yeah,
they'll keep building. So we have a lot of innovation, but we want to do it on the
yeah.
grassroots, on micro level. So yeah, that's it.